piece tells you exactly what you need to know about the pattern, except for the fact that I have added a new fabric to this. So this says cut 2, it should say cut 3, because you're cutting 3 different fabrics from this. So pretend this is a 3, and I'm gonna fix it on the pattern pieces that we'll hand out. So this is a symbol that you are gonna become familiar with. This means cut on the fold. If you were to buy a pattern at the store, it wouldn't say the word cut on the fold, it would just have this symbol, but we add the extra cut on the fold to make it easier for you. So literally, you want this to be in line with this fold here. So I'm going to start out by putting the fold, this on the fold of the fabric. Now I've seen plenty of people through the years put it on the fold like that. You see that gap right there? Multiply this gap by 2, and that's how much too big you've made your pattern piece now. So you want it to be perfect. When you sew, perfect cutting makes professional results. So in this case, my fold is so small, I could get away with just 2 pins. If you have a fold that you're pinning this to that is this big, you're gonna wanna put pins every 4 fingers to keep it on the fold just right. So now I'm gonna do my 4 corners, so make it nice and flat, pin towards the corner, pin to but not through, because you can't cut through that pin with your scissors. To but not through. We have a corner here at the bottom, to but not through, and a corner here. Now I like to say that the little balls, and I'm going to grab a yellow pin to illustrate this, that these are street lights. See, this is the pole, this is the light. So this is the road or the ground. I want my street light to stand up, not to fall over, no earthquakes. So all of your street lights need to stand up. So we are going to do that with every single pin, about 4 fingers away, about, give or take, all the way around the perimeter of this pattern now. By now, I imagine you guys do know how to pin. This is just a reiteration of what you've learned. We'll also get these little pieces here. The more pins, the better, especially when you have a very complicated pattern piece. This is not a complicated pattern piece. This is a very dull pin. So it's not the end of the world if you don't have a ton of pins, but you want it nice and pinned down so your fabric takes on the shape of the pattern piece. Perfection is what we're looking for, because you want all of your pieces to match each other. So if you cut this one out wrong, but you cut your next fabric out right, they won't line up with each other. So you want perfect, there we go, scissors. So I like to cut with, because I am right-handed, with my fabric on the left, holding it with my left hand. And these scissors don't cut to the tip, so be careful with not going through the pattern piece. And the pattern piece on my right. It makes it easier because my pattern piece just kind of helps my scissors just glide along it. Now you can see these pattern pieces are, well, they've been used for years and years and years. Thankfully I have this board here so I don't distort the shape of my pattern piece by just moving the fabric. These scissors don't cut all the way to the tip. Unfortunately, hopefully you have better scissors than what I'm using, so you can make nice long cuts. I'm sure you guys have already learned that you're not supposed to cut like this because it distorts the shape of the fabric. That your scissors are actually created with that nice angle here to go across the pattern piece. And here, usually I'd be walking around the table to do this and not moving the actual pattern piece. So this is the shape of your pattern or your fabric once it's cut out. I'm going to take out the pins to show you what it looks like when it's cut out properly on the fold. But let's say you have a print where up is always right here and down is always down there.
Like words, or we had license plates last year.
Ooh, yes. So you would have to create a seam allowance at the bottom of this fabric, which you would have to talk to me or your teacher, Mrs. Marion, right now to learn how to do that. So here is what it looks like. So if we had a fabric that had words on it, on this side the words are going to be right side up, on this side the words are going to be upside down. So that's why you have to add a seam allowance there. So keep that in mind. Now I'm going to show you how to do the straps. This is being done with a full yard of fabric, so it's going to be a little bit different from what you guys are going to see on your fabrics unless you have a full yard of fabric. Now I had written in the instructions that your straps should be 4 inches wide, so we're going to use our fancy quilt ruler here, and 16 inches is where you have half a yard. So technically these could be 16 inches by 4 inches. I'm gonna make these a little bit longer since we're making this for Mrs. Marion, and I don't know how long whoever you're giving this to. If you have extra fabric, make them as long as you'd like, because you can always cut the straps down smaller. So I'm gonna line this up at the very top with my selvage, which will get caught into the seam allowance, so you will not see this fuzzy after it's sewn. But the selvage is the bound edge of the fabric where all of your threads are woven together. This is the cut edge, and the fold. So those are all good terms for you to know. I have this at 4 inches right here because I want your strap to be 4 inches wide. So I'm just going to cut this like so. I'm going to come over here, and I'm using my hand to hold this down, and I'm keeping my fingers out of the way, and I'm pushing my rotary cutter against the ruler and using it as a guide. I have had people cut their fingers before with this, so if you feel uncomfortable using one, you just have to let Mrs. Marion know. There we go. And sometimes it doesn't cut all the way. So you just grab those threads that didn't cut. And I did it double layer at the top, so I have 2 straps. This is going to be the lining fabric, and this is what we are using for our straps. It's not going to look like the outside fabric, which is our exterior, but that's the look we're going for. We're also going to have to cut out some interfacing, some lightweight interfacing from this. If this made you nervous, you just stick one of these on lightweight interfacing that is double layer, and you just cut around it like this is your pattern piece. So, or you could use this. So, now I'm going to show you something that is advanced that you're not necessarily going to use in this class, but if you were ever to take advanced sewing, this could be something that you use. I'm going to do it with this fabric to demonstrate. This is the fleece interfacing that you are to purchase, the same stuff we used for the boxy bags. I just have to fold this to get it big enough for my pattern piece to fit on it. Pretty darn close. So again, I am going to take this and put it down at the very bottom. I'm going to use pins for this part of it just because I don't want it to move around at all. And then for the rest, I'm going to use my fabric weights. These are wonderful. These literally are just washers. Nice and heavy. so your pattern piece is not slipping and sliding around. I like to use a bunch of them so it doesn't move anywhere. Then you just take your rotary cutter, and you'll be careful at the corners because you don't want to cut too far into that pattern piece. The corners, you can use scissors to help you out. But this makes cutting a lot faster.
When you're using a rotary cutter, guys, you always need to have a mat.
That's right.
We do not want to cut our tables. It is very sharp. So if you need a mat, I know where they're at. Mrs. Bland and I will help you get one.
We have so many mats back there with so many little people sewing right now. We probably have enough for each person to have their own.
Yes, we don't want to ruin our tabletops.
There we go. Got my corners. And I also hold on to this because if you don't hold on to this, the blade pops in sometimes and it just scares the poopies out of you and can make you mess up.
Yeah, you won't get a clean cut.
If you want to try this, you may. It's up to you and Mrs. Marion, but I think since we have so little people this year, that this might not be a bad option for us.
I think that's a great idea. We'll be staggered enough too on our speed that only one or two will be doing this at a time.
So we will do this for the exterior fabric as well.
Now we're good.
Okay, so I had this double layered. We had technical issues, of course. I used this as a pattern piece. I stuck it on here. Again, I'm cutting out two at once. You can see that I cut out two at once. And then I actually stuck this on here too. And I went zoom, 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 real quick. So it was kind of nice to use this as a pattern piece so I didn't have to look at the numbers on the ruler. And it's the exact size that I need it to be. And being a guide just makes it so that I'm not wobbling as I'm going around it. And I'm not using the scissors because it literally took me 2 seconds to cut this out. All right, so I have the bumpy side of the inner facing up, just like I did with the exterior of the bag. Now I'm going to stick my strap on top of it. You want the right side facing you. With this fabric, it doesn't really have a clear right or wrong because they both look exactly the same, but you will probably have fabric that does. And then we're gonna press again. If you notice that you're getting glue on your iron from the interfacing, let your teacher or Mrs. Marion know, and we can clean this off. But you don't want to let this go unnoticed because it can ruin somebody else's project. So not a big deal to get glue on it. It is a big deal just to let it stay there without anybody knowing. I've had prom dresses that advanced textile students were making that have been ruined by interfacing, and that's absolutely devastating. So we are now ready to start ironing our straps so that they look like straps. This is a part that's complicated to explain with words. It's easier to see, to visualize. So I'm gonna take this strap and I'm gonna fold it in half. And I'm gonna iron it so I have this nice crease that's gonna be a guide for my next step. Okay, now I'm gonna open this back up and you have this nice crease that's hard to see, I'm sure, on the camera, but you'll be able to see it in person. I'm gonna fold this to the center, to the crease. Now, if you made a boxy bag, you're doing the same thing you did before with the boxy bag. In fact, next time we make, no, I actually showed that in the video, didn't I? So then, I'm sure you guys know that we're just gonna turn this around and we are going to fold this side to the center. So just like the boxy bag, we're gonna take this and fold everything back up like so. And this is your strap. You no longer have raw edges because they're encased. You can make this strap wider if you want. Doesn't have to be only 4 inches. You can make it 6 inches, you can make it 5 inches. It really doesn't matter how wide this initially starts out. So now, I can do one of two things when I go to sew this. I can sew just with an edge stitch, which means sewing at the edge of the fabric. Literally, edge stitch is named for what it is, right here, and be done. Or I can do it right here too, so it's decorative. So I have the same stitch on both sides. This is not functional, it's merely decorative. This is functional. This has to happen right here. Now, if your two are not folded perfectly, and you go to sew this, there is the possibility you don't catch this side. So you have to go in far enough to catch both sides of your strap. If you need to pin it, you can pin it, but that's not necessary. Those of you who are a little bit unsure with your sewing skills, pinning and ironing is probably the best way to go.